Hey you guys, welcome back. Today we are going to repot this Psychopsis orchid. This is a Psychopsis Callii Green Valley. Let's show you this tag here. It is a really cool plant. If you don't grow Psychopsis orchids, I do recommend them. They are sequential bloomers, and the flower spikes can last 5 years if cared for correctly, and maybe even longer. And which is really cool because they do, as they produce a new growth, they will produce a new flower spike, and then that flower spike will last for a long time, and so on and so forth. So you could have potentially a blooming size orchid with, I don't know, 15, 20, maybe 30 bloom spikes. I don't know. It seems a little bit far out, but 5 or 10 anyway, and they bloom in succession. So you could potentially have a flower all the time on this plant. So right now mine are going through a dormancy period where they're not blooming, and here's one here. It has 3 flower spikes currently on the go. Eventually these will produce more flowers. They've got little green tips. I don't know whether you're able to see that. Little green tips on the ends. And then this one here has actually started to branch out. Do you see how there's a secondary little side branch right here? This was the original branch. So potentially this one's going to now have 2 flowers at a time. We'll see how that goes. And an exciting thing here with this one, this is my regular orange variety. We've got another flower spike started. So soon I will have 4 blooming spikes on this one, which is really cool. They're really easy to grow. These are grown in moss. I generally let them dry out completely for, I don't know, maybe a week, and then I will soak the moss, and then it'll last for a few weeks, and then once it dries out, I wait a little bit of time, and then I water it again. It's a really easy care plant. Just keep in mind that if you're using moss, or if it is in moss, if it's tightly packed, watch yourself, because it could cause root rot. But if it's, if it's a lightly packed moss where there's some airflow, that is a better solution. So anyway, in this repotting video, we are going to use a pre-made mix. This is from Raven Vision. If you live in Canada, Raven Vision has some really good quality products. I know that Brad did a review on them. They sent him all kinds of stuff. I go and see them at the Orchid shows, and it's relatively good pricing. Seems a little expensive, but their product is good quality. So this was $10 for this big bag of, this is fine orchid mix, and it's got perlite in it, it's got a fine fir bark, and it's also got some charcoal, and it looks like there's some vermiculite down in the back. It's funny how these things, you need to shake them up before you use them, kind of thing. And then I'm also going to add some sphagnum moss, because as you know, I am a lazy gardener, and sphagnum moss will give me a couple of extra days between waterings. So if it was just solely bark, I would have to water more often. So if you're an overwaterer, if you love to water, just go with the solid bark mix with the charcoal and the perlite in it. That'll be perfect. But if you don't like to water very often, add some sphagnum moss. I don't like to use a whole thing sphagnum moss because, again, it's very easy to rot your roots with just sphagnum moss, unless it's very lightly packed. But anyway, like I said, we're going to use bark and moss, and I've got it here pre-moistening. I like to pre-moisten my moss because it becomes very easy to work with. So anyway, we're going to use this 4-inch pot. And we've got this little, I'm going to say it's a 3-inch pot that is in, so we're not going up too big of a size. With plants, you don't want to overpot, because sometimes when they don't feel secure, they don't do very well. So you want to increase the size, one size at a time. There are exceptions to the rules, but for the most part, you just want to go maybe an inch bigger. So anyway, let's just get to it. Come on down. We'll start the repotting process. Alright, so let's take out the tag. It's always good to also use a secondary tag and write down when you've repotted it, because orchids, they're slow growers and you kind of forget when you repot them. So if you have a secondary tag and you write the date that you repotted it, then you know whether it's been a year, maybe 2 years since you repotted it. It's good because some orchids, as they grow in their pot, the media over a specific amount of time might go sour. It might hold a lot of salt deposits, which is not good for your orchid, and you'll just notice your orchid deteriorating quickly. And if you know when you repotted it, it's an easier judge. Some plants need to be repotted once a year. Some plants need to be repotted maybe every other year. It also depends on the media that you use as well. So I don't have that. I should do it, but I just wanted to remind you that maybe it might be a good idea. So anyway, let's just pull this out of its pot. Easy peasy. I've pre-moistened this this moss before this video, and I'm just going to go in and I'm going to remove as much of this old moss as I can. Sphagnum moss deteriorates and it becomes sour over time, and it just all of a sudden becomes uninhabitable. I can't even use the word. And you'll find that your orchids just all of a sudden, kind of overnight, just kind of die. So yeah, I'm going to remove all of this sphagnum moss just slowly, carefully. And you don't need to stay here and watch the process. So I will pause the video and we'll be right back. Okay, so here we go. We've got the root system totally clear. A fun little thing, a fun little side note, I was just looking here and I have a flower spike started. Do you see that right in there? Right there? So this is going to be a 3-spike plant very, very, very soon. I'm so excited. That's great news. I don't see any new growth starting besides that, but I am super happy with that. So what I did notice is in the base of the plant, do you see how there's all kinds of brown yucky roots in there? We're going to remove those. I'm going to sterilize some scissors. So I'm getting some rubbing alcohol and my very useful face pads. I don't think I use these on my face. I think I use them only for plants. We're just going to sterilize the scissors. Wipe them down. Be generous with the rubbing alcohol. You actually want to clean them. And we'll let them sit for a couple of seconds. You can use flame as well. I don't know that I have a flame here. Nope, I don't have one. So we'll just let those sit for a minute. So yeah, that's very exciting. And the pseudobulbs are a little bit worse for wear. Do you see how they're a little bit shriveled? The newest one is not shriveled, and that's what matters the most. The older ones, they've stopped growing. In some instances, they don't really have any roots to pull up the moisture. As long as the newest growth has good development, that's the biggest thing. Okay, so we'll take our scissors here. We're just going to go in, move the good roots out of the way, and I'm going to chop away the bad roots. Just going to go in there and cut away all the yucky brown ones. Notice they don't have any substance to them. Gotta be careful with these guys because they have such long flower spikes. They're leaning over and I don't want them to break. Sometimes orchid roots are hard to cut. They've got their actual root is like a little wire, and they don't like to be cut. Alright, so we're good there. Gotten rid of the majority of the gross roots. I've got some hydrogen peroxide, 3%, in this jar, or in this bottle. I was reminded that peroxide needs to be in a dark container so that it keeps its stability, otherwise it degrades over time. Peroxide will actually turn into water. I wouldn't drink it, but I believe hydrogen peroxide is H2O2 and water is H2O, so it's very, very close. It'll just revert back into water. So we're using the peroxide, just spraying it on the root system, getting rid of any badness that might be on there. You want to get rid of any fungal problems or any bacteria issues, and the peroxide will help with that. So we're going to set this off to the side for just a moment. Just going to wipe down my area a little bit, get rid of those yucky roots while we let that sit. Alright, so now we've got our pot. This is a 4-inch pot. This is what it was in before. Really flimsy, but we're going to take some moss in the bottom. I like to use moss in the very bottom. It tends to catch some of the moisture. And then we like to go to some bark mix. And then we're going to take our plant. Remember that the roots tend to grow towards the outside of the pot. Also, this tends to have a little bit of a growth pattern. Notice this is probably the oldest bulb, and then the newer bulb, and then the newer bulb, and then the newest bulb. So you want to kind of have it off to the side, because this particular bulb, the newest one, is probably going to be where the next growth is going to come from. So you want to make sure that it has space to allow for the new growth. So you want that to kind of be in the center of the pot. And then we're going to move this around so that I can easily grab it. Now we're going to pack some mix around the roots. It's going to be a mix of bark and moss. Spin it around a little bit. You want the pseudobulbs to be at the media level. You don't want them to be too deep, but you also don't want to have it propped way up. Alright, remember to be a little bit firm when you're putting this down. Your orchids want to feel secure in their pot. They might be epiphytes, but they still want to feel secure. Alright, get some more bark in there. If you bury them too deeply, you risk the rot of the pseudobulb. If you plant them too shallow, then sometimes the roots don't develop correctly. There we go. Nice and secure in there. Do you see how I don't have them buried too deeply? Put this stuff back in the pot. Don't need that extra stuff. Now we're going to replace the stakes. Remember that the roots are usually around the outer edge, so you're pretty safe by putting the stakes in the center of the pot. There we go. You can't see this. Let's move the camera up a little bit. So with this one, it was wrapped around the stake a little bit. They get so tall, and if they last for 5 years, oh my goodness, they just stretch and stretch and stretch. They can be 3 feet tall, 4 feet tall, these flower spikes, maybe even taller. I don't know. Alright, so, and to be quite honest, these flower spikes, for being as tall as they are, generally they have like a rectangle shape to them, and they seem to be really, really stable. So even if you were to take the spikes off, they would kind of just sway back and forth. They might fall over, but I don't think that they would. In nature, they grow this tall. So they get winds and whatever else. I'm sure that they'd be fine. But we like to stake them just so that you don't have that collapse, because if you have that collapse, it's a long time that you wait for a new one. So anyway, this was repotting the Psychopsis. This was the yellow Psychopsis. Don't forget to put the tag back in. We'll put that back in this pot. And thanks for joining me, and hope you enjoyed this. Join me on the Facebook page, the Plants and Things What's Growing, also the regular Plants and Things page, also Instagram and Twitter. I'm really having a lot of fun with Instagram. I find it a lot more fun than Twitter is. So follow Plants and Things. The link is down below. And yeah, happy growing, everyone. And stay tuned for more updates. Until next time. I pumped this thing up. You can just use a regular spray bottle if you want, but I love these. It's got a little button, and I spray the top and bottom of the leaves. And this works for